Welcome to the Agile Writer Podcast Special Edition. This podcast was recorded on Sunday, January 22nd, 2012 at 1 p.m. Our special guest was Sally Norkus, author of two memoirs, The 11th Summer and Until the Wind Changes. Sally just signed a 3-book deal for her upcoming Christian inspirational, science fiction, time travel, historical fiction novel series called The Secret Diary of Sarah Chamberlain, due out this April. Sally has a lot of experience getting her books in print. On this day, Sally came to Agile Writers to share with us her experiences with Vanity Press, print on demand, and small print presses. We'll be right back after this. Welcome back. On this day, we met at Martin's Supermarket, which has a food court. Food court was pretty noisy that day, and at first the noise was interfering with Sally's discussion. So later we moved into a more enclosed area where Sally was able to talk more freely. Our first question to Sally was about her inspiration for her first memoir, which was The 11th Summer.
My daughter's mother-in-law had listened to my story about my mother, who was an alcoholic, and she said, "You really got to write about that. That'll help other people." And I had never thought about writing. My father was a writer. I have a famous cousin who's a writer, Stephen Ambrose. Have you heard of him? He wrote Band of Brothers. He's my cousin. So they all wrote. I didn't care, but I liked math. You know, I loved math. But she made me feel guilty, actually. She said, "Sally, that story's going to help other people. You got to give it a try." And I thought, okay. That's when I sat down at the computer and stared at it. And I thought, what in the world am I going to do? And that was my first hint that I didn't know what I was doing. I better go get some expertise on this. So I actually did write 5 pages of facts. And that's generally when you start writing and you've never written before, that's what I did. I wrote down the facts of the story. Then I heard about a writers club and joined a writers club in Hopewell. Then I heard about Little Professor's Book Club, bookstore, went there, they had workshops. And that's when I started writing. Didn't know what I was doing, I was still putting down facts. But
when was this?
2003. That was in December. I didn't get to the Writers Club till September. I'll tell you the step that I took before I joined the Writers Club. Not knowing anything about writers, and actually only the Little Professor bookstore is the only place where I was getting any information. But I thought, before I do anything, once I had finished writing, I finished writing in 2004, April 2004, I had all the bones of this book.
That's 11th Summer.
That's 11th Summer. And I'll tell you, the best advice I ever got on writing came from a teacher who wrote creative writing for 4th and 5th graders. She said, and she had read 30 pages, and she said, "I'm going to tell you like I tell my kids. Writing's like building a hamburger." She said, "Right now you got the hamburger, and the hamburger are all your facts. You don't have a bun, you don't have lettuce, you don't have cheese, you don't have a juicy tomato. You can't taste what you're writing." And as soon as she told me that, I said, I get it. And I just flew back to the computer and I wrote 40 pages of description into everything else that I had already. So that's my personal advice on that.
Well, that was noisy, but I promise it gets better. Anyway, we asked Sally about her critique experience, and she told us this.
No, I'm not going to publish anything that I don't think anybody's going to enjoy reading. How do I know if they're going to enjoy it? And you can go different routes. My route was to pay a fee to a critique online for writers. All you do is you send in 3 chapters and they will critique it they've got editors and everything, and they critique it for a fee. I think I paid $90 back in 2004 for them to critique it. And I'll have to tell you, I was completely blown away. As a first writer, you expect them to write back what you need to improve and everything. They wrote me a letter back and said, "Congratulations, we're going to put your book on our website." I mean, where do you go? It was a Christian online critique service, and it's been so long I can't remember, but they're on there. If you put that in, there's a bunch of them that will pop up. Well, you can imagine my shock, because to me, you always need improvement. Always.
You always need what?
improvement. You always need people critiquing you and telling you. So that's when I started handing it out to all my friends and all my family. And I said, I want everybody to tell me everything, because I want it to be perfect. Because I believe that it should not be published until you've crossed your T's and dotted all the I's. A lot of writers, and right now I'm going to talk about two, I'm not naming names, in my other book club that rushed out and got their stories published by Publish America.
Oh, Publish America, yeah, let's talk about that.
Yeah, Publish America, which is not a good self-publisher. And they were horrible books. They weren't ready.
In the sense that they didn't have the description, that lettuce and tomato you talked about, or just grammatical,
mechanical? Everything. I had and I love this man, and he had a scene behind, it was flipped. You know what I'm saying? You're reading a scene, you expect the next scene, and that was the scene that should have gone before that scene. And I don't know if he did it or they did it. I don't have a clue. But
once she had her book critiqued, Sally took her book to see some agents, and she had some interesting experiences.
And go into my timeline. So I thought, let me go to a writer's conference. So I went to a writer's conference in Richmond, and they let you talk. You get like 5 minutes with an agent if you sign up.
Is this with the James River Writers?
Yes.
Okay.
So I went to James River Writers, and I signed up to talk to an agent. She said, I like the concept of your book, but it's not long enough because they asked you how many pages. And I told them it was, 120 or whatever it was at the time. You can't have any less than 200 pages. Nobody's going to look at you. At the time, there was a man out there named Fry, that got burned by Oprah. Do you remember him?
Oh, is that
James Fry.
Oh, yeah.
You remember him getting burned? Okay, because he had passed it off as a memoir.
Right.
It was really a fiction.
Yes.
And I thought, nuh-uh. I'm not going back and putting 80 more pages in this book and turn it into a lie. I'm not going to do it. I'm going to keep it the same. And that's when my dad's voice was in my head saying self-publish. I said, okay, I've made my decision. I'm going to self-publish this book.
Once Sally had made the decision to self-publish, her search began. She had to find a self-publishing company that was right for her. And where did she start?
So what I ended up doing is I called a friend, the only person I knew in the world who had published a book. And she had published it with a company called Wine Press Self-Publishing. So I called them up and I talked to them, and the best part about when I published, and this was in 2005, was they had started a new thing called print on demand. Do you all know what print on demand is? Everybody know what that is?
It is like Hulu.com, yeah.
Okay, print on demand means there's two parts of self-publishers, vanity and print on demand. Vanity says you're going to buy 1,000 copies right up front from our company. You're going to pay for those books and then see if you can sell them. Or print on demand says you can order how many you want. So I talked to her, and then I talked to the company, and I did not want to go with the wine press part because I did not want to pay, get this, at that time, $8,000 to get
With
your
no
book published.
guarantees.
Yeah. No. So they had the print on demand part, which was called Pleasant Word, and they had different packages at that time.
Well, we moved into another room that was a lot quieter. Sally had more advice for us on picking between vanity press and print on demand.
And I had a lady I sat to at a book signing, sat next to her at a book signing, actually paid $10,000 for like 1,500 books.
Was this for a vanity?
Yes. So if you have $10,000, I guess maybe you may want to do that, but that wouldn't be the way I want to go.
Once you get those 1,000 books, are they going to sell them for you?
No.
You're not going to sell them
You've got to sell them
No.
yourself.
You've got to sell them yourself. Do they have any marketing at all for you?
You pay for it.
But you pay for it.
Yes, you're paying for everything. You should know that up front. Self-publishing, you're paying for everything. Now, a lot of companies will have a la carte. Like if you're a restaurant, you're ordering everything a la carte. They have that. A lot of them have that, which is the way I went with this one. But I'll go back with this one. So,
having made the decision to go with a print-on-demand company, Sally then decided how she was going to pay for it and what she was going to buy.
And at the time, my father had passed away, and I knew that, he really wanted me to do this. He encouraged me to do this. So I thought, well, what the heck? Let's go with the most expensive package and get the best deal, which was like...
Was this with Wine Press?
This was with Wine Press under Pleasant Word. Okay. So I paid $2,000, and what that involved was probably, I think I got a choice of 2 different covers that I could choose from for the front. And I got more copies of my book. Not much. As a brand new author and not knowing what I'm doing, it sounded like a great deal to me.
2,000, you said?
2,000. No, you won't even touch that now unless, you go with the smaller companies and a la carte. But anyway, so I got it published. Now, they said they had a publicity for 2,000 extra. And I thought, oh, that sounds great. Let's do that for 2,000 extra. So I paid $2,000 for publicity, and I asked them, what does that include? Oh, we will contact, who you want us to contact. If you have a television station you want us to contact, or a magazine, or whoever you want us to contact, we'll contact and, put a press release out. And they sent me a copy of the press release, which looked fine. I thought, okay, this will work, right? You get 50, I think it was. So they sent them out, never heard a thing. So I called them. I said, so how's this publicity thing going? And, oh, well, we sent those letters out. I said, is there anything else you're doing? Well, we can't go into that. When they said they couldn't go into it, I said, I have made a big mistake. And, of course, as a new author, I did not know that. 1 month after this was published, I got an email from my publisher telling me they would no longer accept returns from bookstores that had my book. That is the death knell for the author, because if their publisher will not accept those returns back, the bookstores won't put your books in there. And that was 1 month. I had gone to Barnes & Noble. I had just gone to Barnes & Noble and asked them if they would put my book in their bookstore right here at Hull Street, right? And they said yes, they would put 3 of my books on the shelf. They actually sold those 3 and ordered 2 more, so that was okay for a beginning author. But then I was dead in the water. Dead in the water. So I was mad.
Sally receives the word that she's dead in the water, and she decides to go out on her own and do her own marketing.
All right, I'm dead in the water at the bookstores. What do I do? So I decided I've got to get out and talk about my book wherever I can talk about it. I called the Progress Index. They came out and did an interview with me, put an article in the newspaper. I went to every organization I could find to talk about my book. It didn't matter. I went home to my hometown, which this is set in Lexington, and I have an ex-stepmother who has her own radio talk show. So I called her up. I said, can I come on? She let me come on and talk for an hour about my book. And she got me a spot on the local TV station so I could talk about my book. But the best thing that she did for me, I'll never forget, is invitation only to the Kentucky Book Fair. It's humongous. It's in a Coliseum. She got me in. Well, she didn't get me in. She got me to talk to who could get me in, and they have to determine your book, and then they decide. But anyway, that's the best thing that happened, because inside that book fair, there were 630 titles in there. You can imagine how huge that thing was. My book came in 67th in sales at that book fair.
Wow.
Wow, congrats.
But they don't have those. Those are rare. But that's the best thing she did. And then the best thing that you can do is get a review. But if you're self-publishing, I'll tell you right now, that's near to impossible. I got 1 review. An online reviewer came to James River Writers after my book was published. I went back to another conference, and she said, send it to me. I'll be fair. She said, I will not accept anything from Publish America. She said, I will not accept anything from iUniverse. And when I told her mine, she said, send it. They said they would review it, and they gave me 5 stars on Amazon. So that was a blessing. But when you're out marketing, you're going to have to do everything yourself. Everything. Do not pay $2,000 for publicity. I never got 1 contact.
Basically, you could have written up your own press release and sent out
Yes,
to all those 50 people.
yes. But I'll tell you right now, in the beginning, when you're brand new, you're going to make mistakes. I'm sorry, but we all make mistakes. It's just going to happen.
Having learned from her mistakes, Sally moves on to her second book, Until the Winds Change.
That I pushed that book quite a bit, and I probably ended up selling probably close to 1,000 copies. But I was busy writing this book because
Until the winds changed?
yes, because after people read this book, they wanted to know what happened to me after I was 11 years old. You know, they said, well, what happened? You know, we want to know the next part of the story, which I didn't want to write, you know, because I don't want to write about me. But I said, okay. So I turned this into a novel. I made it a fiction because in this book, the ex-stepmother I talked to you about, well, she's in there in this one. And
So you're not going to any more book fairs, right?
well, no, she's very prominent. And like in Kentucky, she's a prominent figure, so I thought, I've got to change her name. If I change her name, I've got to change my dad's name. I've got to change everybody's name. So I turned it into fiction. But here's the interesting thing about this, and, you know, God works in mysterious ways. If you look at the picture on this book, couldn't find anybody to really look that much like me, but that's me, okay? This is my stepsister, Arden. And this looks like my stepsister, Arden, which is Sue's daughter. Ex-stepmother, that's her daughter. When I was going to write this book and I went to see Arden and get her permission, Arden, turns out, had cancer. She died like a year later, and I'm frantically writing to get her, you know, the book so she could read it before she died. And after she was gone, I sent a copy to Sue. You know, I thought about it. I thought, because Arden was crazy, and there's things in here that I don't think her mother knew that she had done. But I thought, go ahead, you know. And she, you know, called me back, and she said that she loved the book, and she was glad that I'd sent it to her, even though she was painted a couple of times in not quite a flattering light, but she said that was okay.
Having completed her second book, now Sally needed to pick a new publisher.
All right, so second book. I finished it. Now where do I want to go? With publishing, because I'm not going back to Wine Press. That's where this book...
Why did you decide not to go back to Wine Press?
Because they don't accept returns anymore. You have got to have a company that will allow you to put your book in a bookstore because you're the one that's selling it. You know, there's not a publisher out there saying, I'll go put your books in all the bookstores, don't worry about it, I'll take care of all that stuff. No, you're doing it yourself. That means you're walking into the store, you're going up to the manager, and you're saying, would you please, you know, put this on there. So you're on your own. So I could not go back to them. And I didn't trust them really, because I paid $2,000 for publicity. To me, it was like a money-making machine. You know, it didn't matter whether it's a Christian company or non-Christian company. This is business. You know, and that's what I learned. This is business. And also, I didn't want to pay $2,000 again. After everything I had learned, I was going to go the most reasonable route I could go. So that's where this book comes in.
This is the fine print of self-publishing?
Yes, I'll pass this around. This is called The Fine Print of Self-Publishing.
How'd you come across that?
I knew you were going to ask that, and I was trying to remember. How did I hear? I probably heard about it from somebody else, would be my guess. So anyway, this is a library copy from my library because I knew I'd probably just be using it once, and I could write down all the names myself anyway, so I wasn't going to spend the money. I was going to spend too much money publishing it. So that's a library copy.
Is that something that's been printed fairly recently? Or?
That's the third edition, but that one's probably 3 years old, I think. But anyway, that was great because the author rates all the self-publishers. He says, excellent, and they list them. He says, good, and he lists them. He says, okay, not so good, and do not go to these at all. Now, I am a type of person that I don't really take a book by its cover. I really want to go down deeper. So I decided to go ahead and contact the author of this book myself and talk to him on the phone, because I just wanted to get the skinny on all of this, because there's one page in there where he wrote, I also have my own press. And I thought, okay. So I called him to talk to him and got everything that he said. What it boils down to is the thing that he's offering that's different from all the other self-publishers is the printing cost. Most of your self-publishers are making money in the printing. If they send your manuscript off to start getting printed, and they're sending it off, I'm telling you, it's going to a printer. It's not in-house anywhere. And most of them are by lightning. There's a big corporation called Lightning Printing, and I think they're printing most of the print-on-demand books. They charge
all of the different vanity presses, send them to the same printer.
most of them,
Okay.
yes.
So there's a lot of them.
too.
Yes,
All right.
yes. So Lightning was charging, let's say, $3 a copy, okay? My self-publisher is charging me $9 a copy. They're making $6 off of every book that's getting printed. And that's what Mark was pointing out in this book, is that you are paying all this money to the self-publisher. Why should you do that? So I said, I'm guessing you don't do that. And he said, no. He says, I charge you the $3. Well, if you look a little deeper, he's also making up the money in other ways. There's about 4, 5, 6 different things that you get charged for in self-publishing, and I should have written all of those down. Your royalties, the amount they charge you for you to order your own book. There's all kinds of different fees. You would need to research all of that. But what I came up with after reading this book was Xulon Press.
After doing her research, Sally decided to go with Xulon Press. Now it was time to pick the features that Xulon offered that met her needs.
Xulon, it's X-U-L-O-N. They impressed me the most after reading this. So I called them and I
In
talked to
China,
them.
right?
Pardon?
In China, right?
In China?
China?
No, they're here. They're in the
Just
States.
kidding.
They're in the States. So I called Xulon because they had what I liked, and that's the a la carte. I could choose what I wanted because I have my own website that my son-in-law put up himself, so I don't need a website. What I needed is a distributor, because that's very, very, very important. You have to have a good distributor. And you need to go with the big ones, Baker, and try to have it that way. Like my distributor for 11th Summer and Until the Wind Changes, because I was selling at Christian bookstores too, and they had to be connected to that Christian distributor, which they were. You have to research. That's your main thing. When you're self-publishing, you got to research what bookstore is going to take what distributors and all of that. And these people at Xulon were very good at answering all my questions, unlike Wine Press, who didn't want to tell me anything. You know, when I called them and said, why aren't you accepting returns anymore? We can't tell you that. Oh, you can't tell me that. How interesting, you know. So I said, no, I'm going with somebody who'll answer my questions. And they answered all my questions. And I got paid cheaper for this, and I got quite a bit. I think I paid $1,400. Got the package deal was $1,400 and got more than I actually got with this one.
You got more what?
Perks. You got to look at the a la carte chart. It's the distributor. They had a return policy. My input for the cover. What all? I can't remember what all is in there. You just have to go on their website. If you go on Xulon's website, you'll see what I'm talking about. It's going to list everything that's on there.
Having successfully completed and marketed her second memoir, Sally turns her attention to her first novel, The Secret Diary of Sarah Chamberlain. She also talks about the importance of a good critique group and getting a copy editor.
So I had everything I wanted with this one, and so I was thrilled. And I said, okay, this is great. So then I'm starting on, first I should say I discovered I love writing. Finally at 48, 49 years old. I want to write. That's what I want to do. Okay, what do I want to write next? I don't want to write about myself. I've always loved time travel books, all the time travel books and the fantasy and history. I love history. I've always, like I said, let's combine these. Why not make it like a Christian fiction? Because I like the Christian aspect of it also. Why don't we do that? Okay, that's great. So I started out with the first book, which is called The Secret Diary of Sarah Chamberlain. And I sat down and I started writing it. And I was very happy with Xulon, so I said, I'm going to write this and I'm going to, go back to Xulon and get it published and do all that. Now, the thing I wanted to emphasize before I go any further is that make sure before you do anything that you have a good critique group whether it's your writers club, whether it's people you know, it doesn't matter. You just need a good set of eyes to read your story before you do anything. Do that first. And then the second thing, which I had already talked about that, the second thing is the copy editor. When I was getting mine done, I knew that I did not want to submit it even to a self-publisher until I was sure it was a readable book. So what I did is I went to VCU and I talked to the head of the English department. I said, do you have...
Who was that?
I don't remember his name. It's been so many years ago. But you can look it up. It'll be there. And I said, do you have any grad students? You don't want undergrad, you want grad students that are willing to do some editing for some money, because they're going to be cheaper than the editors you see online that are going to charge you a whole bunch of money. We had somebody come to the Little Professor book workshop, remember? He was a self-publisher, and the amount that he wanted for editing just blew my mind.
Do you remember how much it was?
It was like $900, $1,000.
And how much did you pay for your grad students?
$300.
So that, and how many pages was that?
The first one was 120.
So $300 for 120 pages. It's about $1.50 a page.
But you got to be careful, because the first student I got was excellent. She was wonderful. $300, and I couldn't have gotten a better editor. She would send pages back and say, Sally, don't include a story in there just because you like it. It's not furthering your story along, get rid of it. That's what you want, right? And she would also put little blurbs in there saying, I love this section. This is wonderful. You know, this is what you want in an editor. So she couldn't do my second one. I was so sad. I was so upset. But I went back to VCU because I really liked the first one. And they gave me a gentleman to do it. And he said he'd do it for the same price. I did not do a good job.
He didn't do a good job?
No, I found mistakes. I'm reading it and I'm finding mistakes. I'm like, great, I've got to have it done again. I had to have it done again, you know, and so
how did you pick the students?
They gave me a list, I think, of 3 at the time. And what I did is call them. I wanted to talk to them on the phone and see if we would mesh. And I didn't have a real good feel for the 3 that I talked to on this one.
On the, until the words changes?
Yeah, but still, I mean, just because it's not personally connecting doesn't mean they can't do a good job of grammar and all that. So you just, you know, take it, but it didn't work out. But so there was a secretary at the church where I'm the clerk, and she was very good at that. So we got together and cleaned it up pretty good. But I'd already paid. I felt guilty, so I paid her too. So by the time I paid the 2 of them, I said, okay, I'm done paying for this. I don't know.
How much did you pay total for the second book?
$600.
$600.
And I'm telling you right now, it doesn't work. I got this into Zulon.
It doesn't work?
Does not work. I got this into Zulon. Zulon, I forget their price for their editor to look it over another time, but it was too much money. And I said, okay, I'm going to let it slide. I found 4 mistakes myself in here. They're little. They're like a period or something. There's nothing big in there, but still, it's a mistake. You want a professional. You really do want a professional. That's what I'm getting around to. You want a professional. So for the 3rd one, I wanted a professional. So I went to Zulon. I said, do you know editors, copy editors? Yes, we have a whole list. It's online. Go online. Pick the one you want. I went online. I picked the one I want. I loved her on the phone. She was like $700 or something. Of course, I knew I was going to pay more. I said, fine. Then she called me back. She said, oh, I can't get to it. Had an emergency, but I wanted to get it done. So then I called the next one on the line, and she said, oh, yeah, I'll do it for $600. Woo-hoo! I just saved myself $100. So I sent the Secret Diary off to her.
Secret Diary of Sarah Chamberlain, that's your 3rd book and first novel, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So I sent it off to her, and I got a call about 3 weeks later, and she said, Sally, she said, I love this book. I love it. She said, you don't know this, but I'm an agent. And I went, what?
During the copy editing of her first book, Sally finds out that her copy editor is in fact an agent, and her agent likes the book and wants to present it to a major publisher.
I mean, what?
She's an agent. She's a literary agent.
I was like, oh my gosh, you've got to be kidding me. She goes, yeah, I got to send this to a publisher. You got to please let me be your agent. I'm thinking. So she said she loved it and she wanted to shop it around to publishers and see what she could get. And I was like in shock, you know, because I remember in the beginning I did send out a few letters, you know, to agents and got back what everybody says you're going to get back. You know, it's a little form letter and blah, 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 blah. And, you know, it's not good for us right now, blah, blah, blah. And at the conferences you go to, they allow you to send them like 3 chapters. And they're better because they will give you a little blurb. Most of them, sometimes they won't. And they'll say, really like this, not right for us, you know. And so I'd been that route. And I wasn't going to do it. I was going to stick with self-publishing. So when she said that, I was excited, but I was a little trepidatious. I was like, I don't know. That means silent economy. But she was so convincing. Oh, Sally, it's fine. She had published 22 nonfiction books. She says, I've been publishing forever. And I said, should I trust this lady? Don't really know this lady. Okay, give it a whirl. Go ahead. I got time. You know, so she knew personally the acquisition editor at AMG Publishers. And this is all for Christian fiction, mind you. This is Christian publishing. So she sent it off to them. And I want to tell you right now about traditional publishing. Traditional publishing is hurry up and wait. And wait, and wait, and wait. If you want to go that route, I'm going to tell you right now, you're going to wait forever and ever and ever. Yeah.
Unless you already have a big name.
Exactly. Exactly. That's what you're going to do.
Unless you already have a big name. Dan Brown doesn't wait forever.
No, he doesn't. So anyway, it took she had sent it off right away to Rick Steele over at AMG Publishers. He got back finally. I mean, it goes through stages. You've got Rick who looks at it and says, yeah, I like it, but we don't have a section for it. We do nonfiction. We do, you know, we don't have Christian fiction. But I'll give it to the publisher. So then the publisher reads it, and Rick says, well, okay. Publisher loved it, you know. So the next step is all the editors in the publishing company have to go through stages. Do you like this? Go upstairs. Do you like this? Go upstairs. It's weeding out. It's going through a whole bunch of people, which I don't know, I'm not there, but this is what my agent's telling me. 10 months. 10 months before they called her and said, yes, we want to do this book. 10 months. Well, by then, I'd finished the second one in the trilogy. And she says, it's done. And so I sent it to her. She edited it. And she said, I'm going to send it on to Rick because if they bought one, maybe they'll buy the other one.
Now, when she edited it the second time, did you pay for that as well?
Yes. You pay for your editor every time. Because she's like my editor and my agent. So, yes. So I paid her. She sent it on. And actually got back pretty quick on that and decided to do a 2-book deal. They liked it. So they were going to do a 2-book deal. Signed the contract in September, I think I did. So she got me in advance, which that is still blowing my mind too. I'm saying somebody is paying me in advance for something I wrote. That's just crazy.
In advance for the first book or the second book?
Both.
For the 2-book deal?
Yeah, I got advance for both.
Can you disclose?
Yes, I got $2,500 each.
Nice.
Yeah, but here's the thing again. Like I'm saying about traditional publishers, it's just gonna, it irks me. Is they go by their own timeline. Do you know my agent has gotten her portion of my advance and I've not gotten it yet?
Oh, really?
That's weird.
That's weird. And she thinks it's weird too. She keeps calling him and going, hello, when is my client going to get her advance? Soon.
How long does it take to write a check?
Well, I'll tell you what it is. This is what she told me. She said, Sally, you've got to realize the economy is really, really bad. She said,
They made the deal.
yeah, I know they made the deal. And they're in breach of contract too. And I can walk if I want. You know, I can walk, I can come back, I can self-publish like I intend to doing. But my agent, and I've gotten to know her so well, and I love her to death. We're friends now.
Where
She's
is
like, she's in Georgia. Yeah, she's got a PhD in writing. She teaches college classes and the whole bit. So I trust her. She's like, Sally, just hang in there. Please, just hang in there. It's going to be okay. This is a decision you're all going to have to make when you come to that publishing thing. Because self-publishing is you keep your rights and it goes by fast. You can get out there, you can sell your book. Or do you want to go the traditional route, which is going to take forever, but yet they pay for everything and they get it in the bookstores. And so it's just, you know, what do you want to do?
During the question and answer portion of our presentation, Sally answered the questions about the stigma associated with self-publishing.
What's your thought
on self-publishing, the first go-round, does that elevate your status at all for if then the second time around you want to go the traditional route?
Not really.
Why
They
is
could have
that?
cared. They could have cared less about my other two books, because self-publishing. You've done the self-publishers. You're paying the self-publisher. They don't care about your book.
But somebody's still buying it out there, and I would think that they would care about that.
Well, it depends. Well, I've heard this. I've heard that if you sell 5,000 copies of your self-published book, that makes a difference, because that tells them people are buying it to read it.
Sally was asked about putting her books on the internet as ebooks. She had this to say.
You could do just an ebook, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
You sent
just
a little
market
thing
it
out
on
about that
ebook.
lady just did ebook, and that's all she did, and she's made how much?
400,000.
Yeah.
400,000. Well, this lady who made all the money wanted it to go into print, but no traditional publisher would take her book.
Oh, well then.
She can self-publish it, and she'll see it in
I mean,
print.
if you have enough sales through the ebook method, there are publishing companies that are going to come to you and say,
Exactly.
we want to publish
Exactly.
hard copies and
Yeah.
put them in the bookstores.
Also, it's a
I know that
barometer.
in that case, I'll read it.
It's a barometer for you. If you put it out on an ebook and you get nothing in return, that's a good sign that probably it's not going to fly if you publish it.
Sally went on to talk about audience and picking the right genre.
And you've got to have some marketing strategy.
That's the other thing, is you picking your category or your genre or what you're going to write about. Everybody told me nobody's going to buy this book because it's a memoir about a child who's 11 and her alcoholic mother. Nobody's going to buy it. I didn't write it to make this a big book or a famous book. I put it out there. If you look in the back of my book, I've got it even listed for sites for help if you have, alcoholism and stuff like this. This is more like a self-help book. So I knew that going in, that's what was going to happen.
Sally's in the process of converting her books over to the ebook format, and she was asked about pricing.
When I went online and my book was for free on there, and I emailed Bonnie, I said, it's for free. Really? Are they going to buy the cow if the milk's for free? And she said, no, it's a marketing strategy, Sally. It's marketing strategy. And I said, okay. I said, you know all about the ebook stuff. I don't really understand that part. So I'm going with her. I'm going with what she.
You send us. Excuse me. Do they keep it for free forever, or is that like for?
No. It's just a marketing
come-on.
strategy. It's a come on. But it's also, what do they want to read? Like, people that read my books say they love them. They love them. But if it doesn't interest them to begin with, the title or what's on the back or whatever, it does you no good in sales. Mm-hmm. And like I said, with the two of these, I really didn't write them for that. The ones I am now, I am writing for a large audience. I do want people to read this.
Before we closed our meeting, Sally gave us a preview of what's to come in the secret diary of Sarah Chamberlain.
So I'm so into this third book because I've got my characters going back to the Salem witch trials.
Oh my goodness.
Yes, and so I'm just having a blast. And one of them going back is an atheist girl that's 17 years old. Can you imagine? She's all dressed in black. She's got a pentagram on her t-shirt.
So she's goth?
She's goth. And she's going back to the witch trials. It's too much fun. I've got her in a farmhouse, back in 1692. And she just walks in the farmhouse because before she went back in time, they were having a tour of it, right? They were just touring the place. So she goes walking back in there, not knowing what's happening. The lady's in the dress, a different lady, but she's in the dress, so she thinks it's a tour guide. And she goes in there, and this lady just goes ballistic, screaming and hollering and dropping her eggs. And it's just so much fun. Your imagination, right? You all know, because you're all writers. It's just so much fun in imagination. And that's what we all want to do. We just want to get the stories out, because we're storytellers.
This concludes this special edition of the Agile Writer podcast featuring Sally Norkus. This podcast was recorded on Sunday, January 22nd, 2012 at 1 p.m. Be on the lookout for Sally's new book, The Secret Diary of Sarah Chamberlain, available on Amazon.com. I want to thank Sally and all the members of Agile Writers for making the event a success. Be sure to look us up on iTunes, where you can find this podcast, and any place else where you find fine podcasts. Visit us at agileriders.com. This podcast is copyright 2012, Agile Writers.